Hi, it's Ahmed. I am back at the mountaintop. I apologize in advance for the video quality. I'm just holding the phone with my hand this time. I've been coming up here for a couple of days, and it is an absolutely gorgeous California day today. It's very clear. So I thought, hey, why not post up another book review? Um, I've been reflecting quite a bit on uh, just the state of the world, state of business. And I've been thinking particularly a lot about, you know, debt, what debt means. And I wanted to discuss one of the most instrumental books in my career, I think, in business is Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. Uh, it's an incredible book. It is very insightful. It's a very thick book. And I'd like to start it off with a little bit of a story. I have a friend of mine, Keith Donald. He's one of the co-founders of Spring Source. Brilliant guy, the kind of guy that I want to be like. Just a wonderful person. He's been an advisor, and he's had a successful career as an engineer, as an accidental entrepreneur, I'll say, because he doesn't look like seems like the entrepreneurial type. He's a philanthropist, and I met him at a TrepHub event, and he's just been an amazing individual to even know. And he started this thing called Steady Town, which helps rehouse homeless people. And there was a homelessness problem in Melbourne, Florida. Of course, compared to the Bay Area, that's like, well, like what homelessness problem? The Bay Area has serious homelessness issues. But yeah, in Melbourne, Florida, he was doing as much as he could to rehouse homeless people, especially those who were homeless due to financial issues, like they lost their job. Sometimes they got a speeding ticket that threw all their finances off whack. So I've been thinking a lot about Keith, and he's the one who turned me on to the book. I remember Keith telling me there was a mom who was working at McDonald's, had been taking care of her kids pretty well, and got a red light ticket, and that ticket got fines because she couldn't pay it, and eventually the mom and her kids were living out of the van because it just threw them completely off. And this time, when there's 16 million unemployed people right now, and probably going to get worse. Um, and most Americans don't have a really good nest egg. Most Americans are probably going to be able to relate to stories like that. And Keith was taking a pretty innovative approach as a philanthropist to try to help solve the problem. He wasn't focused on substance abuse; it was mainly just financial. I want to give a quick shout out to my friend Jason Young of Mind Blown Labs. He is another inspiration. Jason has been working on financial literacy for youth from disadvantaged backgrounds. People like me, actually. I grew up in the ghetto in New York and not very financially aware. Made a lot of stupid financial decisions, including a Rolls Royce. I do not recommend that to anybody. Um, and right now, if you have one, I am sorry for you. So, anyways, back to the book. Keith tells me one time, "Hey, do you really understand how debt works, how banks work, how money works?" And up until that point, like I'd accepted that money was this valuable thing. I put a lot of morality into debt. And that's what we all think, We owe a debt of gratitude to someone, we owe a debt to our parents. The good people pay their debts. And yeah, there's a moral aspect to it. But debt, as it is today, is a very different thing. I've been seeing a lot of these talking heads on TV talk about, oh, now we have so much national debt, $2 trillion. How are we ever going to pay it back? And I realize how much financial illiteracy there is, even amongst people who are leading departments like the SBA, possibly, right? Recently, there was the $2.2 trillion stimulus package that was passed by the Trump administration. This is the one time I think politicians actually moved very fast. And They ended up getting hampered uh, by non-politicians because the infrastructure at unemployment offices, the Small Business Administration, just wasn't ready. And I feel like there's also the lack of knowledge about how the financial system works. The SBA, for example, you know, gave what seemed to most people like a generous offer, where they were like, "Hey, we'll get $10,000 into the hands of every business. We'll figure it out later." That actually was a good economic policy choice. And then they freaked out and they were like, "Oh my God, we're going to call it a 30-year loan," which is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And you can tell, no offense to whoever created it. Actually, yeah, offense meant to whoever created it. That person was an idiot. Um, they had no idea about how like finances actually work at a macro level. Had they read debt the first 5,000 years, they would have understand how money works. We live in a world where the US dollar is a fiat currency. It is not tied to the gold standard, and a lot of people talk about, oh, bring back the gold standard. But really, take a deep, hard look at what money is, how it's created, how debt causes money to exist. And, you know, debt for you and me, for, say, like a car or a house, is very different from the national debt. Uh, One of the most memorable lines from the book is, if you owe $400,000 on your house to the bank owns you. If you owe $400 million to the bank, you own the bank. Um, I'm not going to give you the answer as to why that is. You'll have to read the book, or you'll have to listen to it like I did. It's a pretty long book, but it is so worth listening to or reading, especially at a time like this, when so many people have, you know, these misconceptions about what debt is, at a macro level, at a national level. So, am I worried about the national debt? Sure. Not as much as I am worried about the debt that people have, that people owe to credit cards. Not as much as I am worried about student debt. And the student debt and national debt are very different things. Many people are saying, oh, you know, the United States can just print money, and, you know, this is going to devalue the currency. You know, I can understand. I was worried about that as well, with the $6 trillion that's going to get injected. But really, economics is a little bit more complicated than that, especially the modern economy. If you happen to be an entrepreneur, if you happen to be in business, or even if you're just a layperson who finds himself having more time, uh, and wants to understand how this whole, you know, money game works, I can't recommend this book highly enough. It will blow your mind. You will sound like a conspiracy theorist. And mind you, the author is probably viewed with some degree of skepticism by the academic community. But heck, that's a good place to be, I think. So if you go through the book, you are going to learn about things like fractional reserve banking. I also realized that, hey, if you literally wanted to be in the money making business, be a bank. I even looked at how to start a bank. I think my friend Keith actually tried starting a bank and then realized it's very, very highly regulated. There's a lot of things involved, right? A lot of laws. Um, and honestly, right now, I am so glad I'm not a bank. Although, props to all the banks that are helping people. There are a lot of community banks that have stepped up. I feel for all of the employees of the bigger banks who are under a tremendous amount of stress, because these are all people. They feel a moral obligation to help, and they're doing the best that they can. Again, can't recommend debt the first 5,000 years highly enough. I think it'll give you insights into just how money works if you don't already know that at a deep level. Being a geek, being college educated, I had no clue. Um, if you have an engineering degree or even a PhD in engineering, this isn't necessarily something that you learn about. Um, so, highly recommended to my fellow geeks, my fellow founders, and just anyone in general, so that you have a little bit more knowledge of what's going on. You know, can't really predict the future at this point, but you can try. Thank you.